Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, keeping up the pressure in Gaza and debating post-war security, uncertainty for evacuees from northern Israel until they can return home in safety. Mike Pence on the ground in Israel, speaking with CBN News in an exclusive interview. Plus, Israeli President Isaac Herzog on the country's resilience in war and his appreciation for Christian support. All this and more on today's edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. While fighting continues in Gaza on day 91 of the war, discussions over what happens next got postponed after an argument broke out in the Security Cabinet. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has that story.
As fighting continues in the Gaza Strip, Israel is trying to come up with a plan for governing the volatile area after the war ends. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, the first senior official to go public with a blueprint, laid out a four-part plan. It includes ongoing Israeli military control of the overall security situation, a multinational task force led by the U.S., along with European and moderate Arab nations, to oversee civil affairs and economic rehabilitation of Gaza. Egypt takes responsibility for main civilian border crossings to Gaza, and existing Palestinian administration mechanisms will stay in place. The plan does not include the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which Israel says has worked lockstep with Hamas, nor does it include a return of Israeli communities to the Gaza Strip. The blueprint reportedly touched a raw nerve in more right-wing members of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, who opposed the forced removal of some 9,000 Israelis from their communities in the Gaza Strip 18 years ago. Many believe if those Israelis had not been pulled out, the October 7th attacks never would have happened. As the war continues, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is on his way to Israel for the fourth time in 3 months, expected to focus on trying to prevent the Israel-Hamas war from spreading in the region. Netanyahu met with visiting U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham Thursday, who said he was committed to bringing stability to Israel. Graham visited Kfar Aza, one of the 22 communities worst hit by the Hamas massacre on October 7th.
This attack was primarily motivated, I think, to stop the effort to reconcile between Saudi Arabia and Israel to build on the Abraham Accords. The brutality here was so strong and so visible, making it impossible for Israel not to respond. The destruction of Hamas is non-negotiable. Whatever it takes, as long as it takes.
And the Israeli military is pursuing that mission of destroying Hamas. Inside Gaza, the Israel Defense Forces raided a Hamas base that included a branched underground network connecting to an underground weapons factory.
There were a number of trap doors to make it difficult to get into. Behind the doors were explosive materials, machines and other tools from which they created long-range rockets and other means of warfare used for carrying out terrorist operations for years on the territory of the State of Israel.
A day earlier, IDF spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari noted that international intelligence agencies led by the U.S. are supporting Israel's findings on the terror infrastructure under Shifa Hospital.
Based on these intelligence agencies, these actions by Hamas are an indication of Hamas's terror activity and how they cynically exploit hospitals for terror and also for holding hostages.
Israel also exposed evidence that Hamas is educating children to hate Israel and Jews, something advocacy groups have been saying for years. In non-war times, Hamas operates summer camps where children learn to shoot weapons, storm tunnels, fight tanks, and kidnap soldiers. During the current war, Israel says Hamas has been employing children to deliver messages and ammunition to terrorists, knowing that Israel complies with international law and won't harm children. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence came to Israel to show his support during its war with Hamas. We sat down with Pence after he visited some of the sites of the October 7th massacre, and he explained why standing with Israel now is so important for America and Christians during Israel's darkest hour since the Holocaust.
I came to Israel to say to the people of our most cherished ally, the American people are with you. I know that tens of millions of Americans are praying for the people of Israel every day. But I must tell you that being here and walking the streets and walking through a kibbutz that was the site of some of the most unspeakable violence on October the 7th has only steeled my determination to be a voice for American support for Israel. These are dire hours for Israel. It's so important that the United States make it clear that we're with Israel today, we will be with Israel tomorrow, and we'll be with Israel every day until the threat of Hamas terrorism from Gaza is eliminated once and for all.
You've met with some of the families today as well. What was your feelings, impressions meeting with them?
I must tell you that I've been to war zones during my time as vice president and during my time as a member of Congress. But the sites that I saw today, the aftermath of that terrorist attack on October 7th, and even a site like this, the ongoing war on Israel by Hamas, it just was pure evil. To walk through a kibbutz where literally thousands of Hamas terrorists went from house to house with the simple objective of brutally murdering people. And also, I believe the United States needs to make it clear to other actors in the region, whether it be Hezbollah in Lebanon to the north, or most especially to the mullahs in Tehran, that the United States will be here for Israel, and that we will be prepared if there's an effort to widen this conflict in any way.
The Biden administration is trying to actually limit maybe some of the fighting going on in Gaza. However, a majority of Israelis and Israeli families and soldiers want to continue the fight. How would you respond to some of the limits that the Biden administration is trying to put on Israel?
I just don't accept it. I was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11, and America did what we believed needed to be done, taking the fight to the enemy in Afghanistan. And I remember the way our allies stood with us, and they didn't question how we were going about bringing those to justice that had attacked our country. They just stood with us. And I think Israel deserves the same now.
You gave a speech a few years ago at the Knesset talking about your Christian Zionism. What do you mean by that, and how can people pray for Israel right now?
Well, I'm someone who like most Americans throughout our history has cherished the notion of the Jewish people returning to their homeland. Literally, you can look at the American founding and see a Zionist movement where preachers and pastors were calling for the return of the Jewish people to their homeland. And in 1948, it happened, and America became the first nation on earth to recognize Israel. And I believe we've been her greatest ally ever since. And so, for me, it springs from a common foundation of Judeo-Christian faith. But it also springs out of the promises of the Bible. That I think, like most Christians, I believe that those who bless her will be blessed, those who curse her will be cursed. And it's absolutely imperative that we continue to stand with Israel, particularly in the dark days through which they're passing now. But beyond all of that, as I said in that speech, we stand with Israel because her cause is our cause, her values are our values, and her fight is our fight. And I really believe that this is a moment where that relationship has been more important than ever before. And I just thought it was important for me to come here as a former vice president, but also just as an everyday American of faith, to look the people of Israel in the eye and say, we're with you, we'll stand with you, we'll be with you until the peace and security is restored. And And I believe Israel and America will be blessed for that.
Still ahead, Israeli citizens from the northern border put their lives on hold until the threat from Hezbollah is gone. Following the Beirut strike, which killed a major Hamas leader, a ground war in Lebanon could be closer than ever. Evacuated residents wonder how long it might be before they can return home. Chuck Holton has the story.
Kibbutz Yiftah sits only 2 kilometers from the Lebanese border, and its people have been living in hotels since early October. It appears they may not return home anytime soon.
I think the less safe I feel is right here on the road. But I have faith.
When I was alone with the kids, the room was fine, and I wanted my kids to be close to me because they were frightened and they had anxieties before they go to sleep, and they asking about Dad. But now when he came back and we are in this little room, and it's very crowded and it's very small, and we're trying to be thankful with the things we have. We have each other.
The close proximity of Yiftah to the Lebanese border, however, adds to the sense of fear about going home. With the escalating conflict, these residents are pressuring the Israeli government to do whatever it must to allow them to reclaim their lives.
We are much closer to the border than most of the kibbutzim in the Gaza Strip. It's scary, I must say, and we need to be sure that we're safe in order to come and live here again in our homes. So this is our request from our government, from our army. Please make us safe.
The day-to-day uncertainty takes a toll. Ongoing missile attacks from Hezbollah, despite Israel's commitment to wipe out the threat, leaves many here feeling powerless.
Like every day I was crying. I'm trying to think, like every time I feel like I don't have enough perspective to see the whole picture, because I lived day by day, not even day by day, and hour by hour, because I don't know. Every morning I wake up and I'm not sure how things are going to go in the country with the war, and I feel like I have no control on life.
Hezbollah commander Hassan Nasrallah gave a speech the day after the attack on Beirut, saying that it was a crime that would not go unpunished. Meanwhile, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari of the IDF says that his troops are prepared for any scenario. That kind of talk adds up to the likelihood of an extended displacement, as the hope for a secure return home remains tied to the IDF's ability to remove Hezbollah from southern Lebanon. These folks realize that may be out of reach without an extended ground invasion.
This will take a very long time. That's what everybody keeps saying to us. That's what the messages that we're receiving is that this will take months, until we have to just wait and hope that the war with Hezbollah will create some kind of safety net for us to be able to return home, because without that, we will not be returning to our home in Yiftah.
Chuck Holton, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Up next, we talk one-on-one with Israeli President Isaac Herzog about how Christians around the globe are standing with Israel as the war rages on. Over the holidays, CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl interviewed President Isaac Herzog about the current state of Israel and what Israel needs to do in this moment. Here's part one of their wide-ranging conversation.
President Herzog, thank you for joining us on CBN News.
Thank you, Julie.
So since October 7th, Israel is in probably one of the worst times it's been in since it was established. How do you feel about the situation now? Do you believe Israel is going to come out victorious?
So we are at war, and the war that we are holding is not only a war between Israel and Hamas. It's a war that has to define civilizational values, and it has to define the way the family of nations operates. We're in a way protecting the values of a major part of the world who believes in freedom, liberties, democracy, because if we weren't here, and all Jews would be wiped off here. That's what the Hamas wants, these ISIS-type organizations, these jihadists. Then Europe would be next, and the United States is next.
Now, your father was a voice of comfort to Israel during the Six-Day War. Do you feel that you are, in this moment in Israel's history, called to bring comfort at this time of Israel's struggle for its survival?
In many ways, yes. I'm the head of state. I'm the president of Israel. I don't hold the executive powers, and I believe in unifying our people, in comforting our people, in hugging our people in the moment of great, great pain and agony. I see so much pain and agony, so many cups full of tears, so many good citizens of Israel whose lives were taken and they were killed by lecherous, murderous, sadistic and barbaric terrorists. This is really a test for our nation as we move on. And I'm very grateful to the support we're getting from many, many friends, from the United States administration, from President Biden, from both sides of the aisle. But I'm really moved by the strong Christian communities all over the world who've been supporting us. I recently, just a few days ago, in honor of Christmas, I hosted a group of evangelical pastors in Israel who reside in Israel and relay a message of friendship and solidarity, and it was just simply amazing. And I want to thank all the supporters of Israel and all our friends in the United States and all over the world who are siding by us and supporting Israel. Toda rabah to all of you from Jerusalem. Thank you.
A lot of those Christians feel they're praying and they're supporting Israel, but many want to know, what can they do more? What can they do more to support Israel?
First of all, we have to remember that we have 129 hostages out there, from babies to old age people who are coming of age, who are all alone in this terrible, dire situation, in the worst type of abduction by a sadistic terrorist. And we have to pray for them and we have to work for them, meaning we have to raise their issues all over the world. Each and every government and each and every network should put them as the main item in their news and point a finger to Iran, who is holding this empire of evil with its forks all over the place, from Hezbollah in Lebanon, from Hamas in Gaza, from Iraq and Syria, and of course with the Houthis in Yemen, who are actually making all families around the world pay a much higher cost because of the cost of travel and the cost of trade around the world. And this is therefore a war that matters to all people in the world.
Coming up, President Herzog shares how Israel is a beacon of freedom and safety for religious minorities in the Middle East. Here's the second part of Julie Stahl's conversation with Israeli President Isaac Herzog. Take a look.
Israel is the state of the Jewish people, or the Jewish state, but you have lots of minorities here. You have the Muslims, the Christians, Druze, Bedouin. How do they really have freedom of religion here? Are their holy sites protected? How are they responding?
Absolutely. Israel is strongly committed to protection of all the holy sites. Israel is extremely committed to it from the day of its creation. Moreover, I would say that every year I have an annual gathering of all the Christian leaders, all the leaders of the Christian communities in the Holy Land. Usually a very joyous event. On Thursday we convened. It was a sad event. There was no music. It was only a discussion on how much pain everybody is enduring and suffering. However, I repeated and reiterated Israel's full commitment to the protection of all Christian communities in the Holy Land, to the freedom of religion, to the freedom of practice, and of course the protection of the holy sites.
How does that compare to the countries around Israel?
So we are the only country in the region which is democratic, which has full freedom of speech as far as possible, fully protected by our Supreme Court, which is a strong independent judiciary. We have the right of free speech embedded in our DNA, and it's very impressive in a country fighting terror. All the countries around us are dictatorships and autocratic, and therefore it's not promised that the freedom of religion will be there. There are countries around us where the freedom of the Christian communities is questionable. In Gaza itself, the Palestinians haunted, chased, and burned churches. And we are doing whatever we can, even amidst these terrible battles in Gaza, to make sure that the Christian members of the Christian faith and other faiths are fully protected, are not attacked by our forces.
As a child in Israel or growing up here, do you have any memories of encounters with Christians or the Christian holidays or anything like that?
I would say that I grew, my adolescent years were spent in New York, where my father served in the United Nations. So I was, of course, exposed to the Christian life, naturally. But I told you that even my grandfather was the chief rabbi here. I had an intense dialogue. He came from Ireland and always had a very close relations with the Catholic Church in Ireland. And I, for one, for years have been keeping this and following in my father's footsteps, who was also president of Israel, the sixth president, in maintaining a very strong bond with the Christian communities in the Holy Land. And let's hope that 2024 will bring with it a different direction for the people of the Middle East, a direction of peace, a direction of no more war.
Now, I personally have been so impressed by the way Israelis come together and volunteer and want to help and want to be involved. What do you think gives Israel that oomph to do that?
First of all, I want to thank volunteers who've come from abroad. Many Jewish volunteers, but I also invite many Christian volunteers to come and volunteer. There's a lot of issues dealing with the farmers and the agricultural field because, unfortunately, foreign employees had to leave during the war. There's the need to strengthen and foster the communities on the border, both north and south, of being evicted. But I must speak about the spirit of my nation. I'm so proud of Israel. This spirit of unity, of giving to the other. I say this is the hidden light of our nation. We spread hidden light here from the Holy Land. We send this message abroad. Love thy neighbor as thyself, and people are doing this big time. And I'm so proud and so honored to head this nation, which has shown again that it is resilient and strong, optimistic, and shall overcome.
Well, thank you very, very much, President Herzog, for joining us. Our prayers are with you, and we really are praying for the best.
Thank you.
Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media and access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And remember to continue to pray for the safety of IDF soldiers, all those caught in harm's way, and for the safe return of all the hostages. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.